So could you tell me your own in your own words, what are the essential elements of the language of work?
Hmm. Well, there's two parts to this. There is the work formula,
Mm-hmm.
and the other part is the various models that have been devised as a part of the language of work to which we would apply that work formula.
Okay.
Okay? So the reason for that is that work clarity, in my way of thinking, is not just about what work is, but the way work is structured and seen in the business itself. So the language of work attempts to clarify both. So let me tell you how it does that. First of all, there's the work formula. And the work formula is, of course, the 6 systemic elements that define basically what work is from an operational standpoint, no matter what kind of work it is, whether it's the work of the whole organization, the individual or work group, or whether we're really talking about the standards or the human relations, whatever it is when you say work in a particular way. So that's one thing. But the clarity also comes about in the language of work through how it is applied within the enterprise. So what I have developed are 3 models for business. One of those I simply call the business model. And that business model is designed to say that an organization, from a work standpoint, is made up of various levels and layers. So there are 4 levels, which are the business unit, the core processes, the jobs, and work groups. And then there are these layers which underlie and override or on top of the various levels, and that would be the standards to which work should rise. And then, of course, there's human relations, and there's work support, and there's the financial support aspect of work. So I want people to look at their business in terms of those levels and layers when they apply this work formula, because if they'll do that, what they'll be able to do is line up all those things in such a way that they really all work together, because they are key parts of the language of work. So the language of work is just not the work formula. Many people kind of come to that conclusion, that's what it is, but it's really about what it's applied to. And one of the major areas applied is in what I call the business model. Secondly, we have to come to an better understanding of how to manage that model. And so there's a managing model as well. And we can take this work formula and apply it to the various functions that a manager would normally be responsible for. And that would range all the way from doing performance reviews to planning work to helping make changes. There must be at least 25 of these different kinds of functions that a manager does. And instead of always approaching them each in a different way, there's a common way to do it through the work formula that again helps integrate those things together so that when we make a change and do a performance review, it can be one and the same thing, not separated from one another. And finally, we come down to another model which has to do with the third model, which has to do with work implementation. And I've started to call that work analytics, and that takes more time to explain. But here we're talking about when you implement work, how can you use the work formula, again in a variety of ways, to better implement that work. Whether that's planning the project, for example, or trying to figure out a better solution to something, or whatever it is, the work formula can be used to implement work as well. And then beyond those 3 overriding kind of major aspects of business, there's all kinds of other things that companies do when they want to make changes and make things better. I often call them the modalities that they operate in, such as lean manufacturing, continuous improvement, whatever kind of
Okay, and so that would be something you wouldn't call it organizational development, but maybe other people would call it that?
They would, and it has its own kind of meaning to it, but that would be that's one kind of modality that is typically instituted in a company. And the question is, how can you do that better? And specifically, how can you do that better using the work formula? So if you're doing lean manufacturing, for example, you can use the work formula to do that much quicker. And I'm just as concerned when we're doing these kinds of things as being efficiency, so we can save money and also avoid aggravation, because change always breeds conflict. So how can you avoid as much conflict as humanly possible? And this work formula helps do that. So this is all to say that the language of work is a big, broad system of how to look at work and operationalize things much better and much more quickly. And at the same time, it's a very tiny thing, which says, look, I need to figure out how to do my job better. And I can help you do that. Or you can say, I'm an executive, I need to reorganize this company. I can use this methodology to do that quicker, faster, and much easier, more effectively. So that's a lot. Sounds like a big deal, but actually it's fairly simple when you think of it in terms of the work formula and how we've used that formula to do virtually any kind of work or work change, management, organization, improvement. That's what it's about.
Okay, great, thank you.